Welcome to the School of Love, the place where miracles are normal. Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel, the School of Love. My name is Grajdian and I'm helping people discover their inner potential for love towards oneself and towards the others. From the very beginning, I must emphasize the fact that this YouTube channel is separate from my educational and research activity at Hiroshima University, but at the same time it is part of my effort and desire to offer additional information to my classes and to my publications to those who are eager to learn and to expand their horizon. If you are new to the channel, at this moment I would like to ask you to please consider subscribing, sharing, liking, commenting. Thank you very, very much. This helps us not only with the mysterious algorithm which seems to dominate the YouTube galaxy, but also with contributing to the expansion of the community of humans doing their best to impact positively the world and those around them by discovering their authentic selves and living life wholeheartedly. Thanks again. With that being said, I will to talk today about my thoughts. I will express today my thoughts on femininity and how this relates to late modern, dating space, and which are potentially the challenges, threats, and dangers lying ahead if we do not take some corrective measures sometime very soon. So in the first step, I will talk about empowered femininity and the clock bomb of digital love. From my own fieldwork, I can say that when confronted with antisocial behaviors in the dating procedures, the first reflex of women is to shut the perpetrator off and to move on to the next candidate. It takes, however, less than 5 such attempts to realize that the first case was not just bad luck, but in fact a grueling trend, which seems to worsen the more time and energy one spends in the virtual world. Subsequently, when it becomes obvious that there is an immensity of rotten humans out there doing their best to ruin other people's belief in love and happiness, the innate need to contribute somehow to the improvement of the world emerges. The emotional thought that even if romantic involvement is not possible, at least one could make a difference in someone's life by showing him the goodness in humanity and the value of being a genuine, authentic human being. This is the point where a downward spiral of betrayals, lies, eternal postponements start, experienced by the vast majority of women who have ever delved into the dark depth of online dating. There are 2 consequences. The first consequence is that a profound and very toxic lack of trust in men and their ability to be normal or to be civil begins to creep into the minds and souls of the women. A worldview with men as notorious liars, manipulators, cheaters, unable to behave appropriately, be it in family, at work, going out with friends, or simply in the street, crops up. The increasing lack of trust affects large parts of the women's daily activities and eats at the very fabric of their interactions with other humans, as it is not limited to the male population. At some point, it starts to attack their perception and processing of the female citizens as well. They question themselves as social entities and, inadvertently, need gradually more validation and reassurance from those around them. The lethal virus of flaky behavior and broken promises induced by online activities is steadily taking over the features of cancerous tissues, destroying the healthy, positive, strong essence which a normal social education had been providing. We all have insecurities and weak points in ourselves, of which we're painfully aware or not aware. We all depend to a higher or lower degree on others for support and validation. This is what makes us human. The ability to be vulnerable and to trust is what allows us to live with the others and to need them. Clear, powerful, robust boundaries give us a sense of self as individuality, but belonging to a specific community, as fluid as the concept of community has become nowadays, is what protects us from being completely exposed to external attacks and predators. Trust enables us to feel comfortable with those we love and who loves us. Back to back in times of danger and face to face in times of joy, trust binds and protects, builds the foundation of the future. Those generations coming after us will continue and finish what we have started in the same way as we have been continuing what those before us have started, and creates the sense of immortality beyond the biological limitation of the individual physical life. The past turns thus into a reservoir of energy and hope, transcending its purely historical function of delivering legacies of knowledge and technology. Trust is hope, and its loss equals a dissolution of the human spirit, worse than biological death. The second consequence is a hardening of these women's femininity, which leads eventually to the loss of their femininity. This is a double-edged phenomenon. On the one hand, multiple discourses within feminism have repeatedly argued for complete equality between men and women. On the other hand, the power of the feminine instance and of femininity in its most fascinating dimensions resides in its regenerative abilities, its function of motherhood and its comforting glow, its visionary optimism and solar energy. It is from here that we need to reconsider femininity and its loss through a wrongly understood and applied feminism, as well as through the masculinization of mating strategies resulting from illusionary consumerist dating practices. The result of this reformulation process is the reinvigoration of femininity and its repositioning at the center of humankind, a fundamental factor in the survival of the species. Feminism, as it was envisioned and outlined by its founding mothers, was the effort to win back femininity and feminine essence, as well as feminine energy, from the increasingly dangerously powerful, unstoppable, all-consuming modernization, with industrialization and urbanization being its two main factors. When Simone de Beauvoir wrote The Second Sex, or Le Deuxième Sexe in French, in 1949, she referred to the culturally constructed differences between men and women and how these are exploited by being neutralized through education and role models. Raising awareness on the differences between genders and on the necessity to accept those differences was, in this reading, Beauvoir's task, not the disempowerment of men and their overpowering by women. Moreover, Julia Kristeva's references in her seminal work, The Revolution of the Poetical Language, in French, La Révolution du langage poétique from 1974, to motherhood and motherly love in the semiotic spaces of language and arts, which impacts and formulate politics and economics, and thus set societies and technologies of power in motion, were not meant as a cry towards limitless sexual liberation and elimination of men. They were in fact an act to awaken insight and caution, to indicate of the lurking dangers within the modernization project, based mainly on features such as physical strength, the pressure to advance and impose progress, to dispose of those unable to keep the pace, either by killing or by displacing them, mostly associated with masculinity and the masculine worldview. Emotions and tender nurturing were not part of the modernity as pursued and developed by technocrats and idealists. They were, or they are, though, the fuel on which the engine of femininity works, on which the polarization between masculinity and femininity thrives, and in turn creates the beautiful contrasts in life and in the world. As it happened, aggressive movements in the 1950s and the 1960s, followed by a snowball-like succession of misunderstood publications and fake celebrities, created alongside several decades the image of the feminist woman as void of femininity and emotions, a smaller man, physically speaking, capable to compete with her male counterparts in any field. The alpha female, a highly merchandised androgynous creature. A highly merchandised androgynous creature. In spite of the astronomical pressure to achieve like a man, recent history has proven that this is not realistically the biological case, as separate standards of physical prowess in almost every domain have gradually emerged and stayed in place. Educated to be assertive and bold, to reject their feminine gender as weak and objectified by instruments of the political discourse, unable to resist as a singular voice in the lonely crowd of misguided fellow citizens, the late modern woman finds herself in the new millennium confronted with expectations and tensions she could not possibly deal with. The so-called crisis of masculinity and the disintegration of the social fabric, visible in huge numbers of single persons, single person households, single parents, and an unprecedented rate of divorces in the affluent post-industrialized nations, tendency increasing, is a direct consequence of the crisis of femininity, of the impossible choices late modern women are facing and compelled to make, of the contradictory loyalties they are supposed to submit to, marching against nature and defying fundamental laws of the biology. For instance, the basic polarity between male and female, survival and death, procreation and extinction, belonging and isolation, ultimately love and hatred. There are hardly any examples of the feminine woman promoted by media in an empowering and liberating manner, transcending the fears and limitations imposed upon by the feminist discourse. Repeated waves of feminism have fundamentally corrupted its initial significance, constructed by such intellectuals as Simone de Beauvoir and Julia Kristeva, who are focused on solutions and visions for the future, not on endlessly rehashing the past. The reasons are manifold: a faulty definition of femininity, the lack of courage to address femininity as a daily processual practice, not a stable fixed entity, the absence of emotional flexibility to allow for multiple femininities to coexist on the biological foundation of motherhood, the rejection of spiritual maturity to acknowledge and celebrate differences instead of denying and effacing them, the inexistence of mental strength to acknowledge femininity and masculinity as complementary structures within the greater whole of humankind, interdependently connected to each other on the basis of mutual respect, acceptance, and cooperation. This is what I see as empowered femininity, carried out by the feminine woman of late modernity. Accordingly, empowered femininity is defined by a sense of calm happiness and unconditional self-love, flowing like liquid sunlight from within herself towards the other world. It transcends the limitations of gender and sexuality and encourages a warm interaction with oneself and the others. The empowered femininity of late modernity resides in the biological ability of women as potential mothers and primary educators to see themselves in the proactive role of messengers of love, faith, and compassion. The feminine woman of late modernity does not reject her gender and her sexuality, but regards them as assets in her perception and processing of reality, of the life, and of the world. She is nurturing but not conformist, and the freedom of choice does not include promiscuity and dishonesty. Living with integrity and facing challenges with courage, she lives in harmony with herself and with other humans, with the nature and with the universe at large. A soft sense of calm enthusiasm brings her to ever deeper levels of peace within herself, and she glows that peace toward those around her in the eternal flow of coherent human interactions and exchanges. The feminine woman of late modernity is far more than a plain alternative to shoujo, this teenage girl in Japanese culture, and her fluid juxtaposition of power, sexuality, aggressiveness, and nonchalance. Like Princess Leia Organa from Star Wars or Princess Kaguya from the animation movie The Tale of Princess Kaguya in 2013, based on a 10th century Japanese folk tale, the late modern feminine woman is a metaphor for transcendental, empowered femininity across times and spaces, while having definitely extracted crucial elements from shoujo's imaginary conglomerate. She keeps a childlike joy of experiencing life in its everyday transience, while maturing under the sign of healthily incorporating new experiences and challenges. Mainstream media and public opinions may still objectify and sexualize her presence, but the feminine woman knows that anger and aggressive display of disdain or contempt is far below her dignity, so that she gracefully distances herself from mass media images and stereotypes of what a woman should be like, and instead focuses on creating a life of her own with people around her with whom she shares common values and ideas. Rising above impossible standards of success and likability, the late modern feminine woman decides that her destiny lies in the very choices she is making. Neither Princess Leia Organa nor Princess Kaguya find their fulfillment in direct connection with the men, but rather in their decision to pursue their own path in life, and in their individual determination and commitment to stay true to themselves. At times, it implies sacrifice and pain, and the lesson that love is something to give, not to take. It is something to give to oneself and to others, a mindful choice made every day, like happiness and a warm, soft sense of belonging. Beyond the momentary solitude which might arise from such an attitude towards life, there is the ineffable promise of a better world to emerge from the chaos and confusion of this one, suffocated in sex, consumerism, and hatred. A promise of acceptance and solace, of quiet celebration of the human being and of humanity in its astonishing diversity and unleashed potential. It is on the background of this empowered femininity and its fundamental function in the survival of humankind as a biological species that the toxicity of online dating practices appears in its full Voldemort-like ugliness and evil. The lack of trust, which eats at the very fabric of human society, is the first level of distraction, incurred by virtual behaviors to the real world. The gradual loss of authentic, inspiring femininity results from it, as without trust there is no human bond and no unconditional commitment, which, for better or for worse, have constituted the foundation of the family at the very core of any sort of social construct. So, with that being said, thank you very much for listening to me today, and I'm looking forward to welcoming you back here again very soon. Love and peace to you all.